The story begins in the quiet stillness of late afternoon, in a neighborhood where maple trees arch overhead and cicadas hum with the stubborn rhythm of summer. The sidewalks radiate the day's warmth, holding onto the heat even as the sun begins. Its slow descent. Down one of those sidewalks walks Anya, a 12-year-old whose steady stride speaks to both focus and innocence. Her backpack bounces lightly against her shoulders, the straps worn from school days, the fabric bright against her dark hoodie. Braids glint as they catch the fading light, every strand a testament to the care of the hands that styled them. She isn't rushing. She isn't hiding. She is simply moving through space the way any child should be able to, without suspicion trailing her steps. Yet on this particular evening, the simplicity of her walk is interrupted. A patrol car slows to a crawl beside her. The officer inside, a man named Vance, lowers his window. His face is framed with the authority of a uniform, the weight of his badge visible in the way he tilts his chin. His tone is casual on the surface, but it carries a sharp undercurrent. "Where are you headed?" he asks, eyes narrowing slightly. "To meet my mom." Anya replies, her voice calm, respectful, rehearsed. Her mother has always told her how to answer questions like these. Keep your tone level. Keep your hands visible. Don't give them any excuse to twist your truth. Vance's questions continue. Where she lives, why she's in this part of town, whether she has identification. Each inquiry stacks on the next, building an invisible wall that suggests she doesn't belong here. Though she answers politely each time, his skepticism only hardens. Finally, he leans back in his seat and smirks. "Your mom, huh? What does she do?" There's no hesitation in Anya's voice. She's in the Special Forces. The words hang in the air for a heartbeat, strong and certain. For Anya, it is simply the truth. For the officer, it is fuel for ridicule. His smirk spreads into a laugh, the kind that drips with disbelief and condescension. He shakes his head, slowly, as though humoring a child caught in a lie. "Special Forces?" he repeats, the mocking in his tone sharp enough to sting. "Sure, kid." That laugh cuts deeper than his questions. It isn't just doubt, it is dismissal. It is the refusal to see a black child's reality as valid. To him, her claim is impossible not because of the words she spoke, but because of who she is. His derision becomes a performance, and soon, neighbors drawn by curiosity and unease gather at the edges of the scene. Their expressions tell a silent story. They've witnessed this before. The disbelief, the smirk, the slow erosion of dignity under the weight of bias. For the crowd, this encounter echoes more than one child's ordeal. It mirrors a wider truth. How often young black children are pressed to defend their innocence, their potential, even their family's achievements. For Anya, it is another test in a world where even honesty is met with ridicule. This is not just about one officer and one child. It is about the unseen strength required to walk through life, knowing disbelief will greet you at every turn. It is about how a simple truth, "My mother serves this country," can be met with laughter rather than respect. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged unfairly just for who you are? Comment yes or no below. Your story matters here, because what unfolds on this street is not an isolated moment. It is part of a much larger struggle for dignity and truth. The laughter doesn't stop with a smirk. It grows, echoing across the street, carrying the sting of mockery. Officer Vance shakes his head slowly, as if Anya's words were nothing more than a child's fantasy. "You expect me to believe that?" His tone is sharp, tinged with disbelief. "Special Forces? That's a good one. What's next? You'll tell me your mom's the president?" Anya doesn't flinch. She steadies her voice, keeping it calm the way her mother has always taught her. "It's the truth. She serves in the army. I can call her right now if you want." Her words are measured, respectful, but the officer's body language says he isn't listening. His arms fold across his chest, his weight shifts to one side, and his chuckle grows louder. It is more than skepticism. It is a deliberate performance meant to belittle kids these days, he mutters under his breath, loud enough for her and the crowd to hear. Always making up stories. The neighbors gathered nearby exchange uneasy glances. Some fold their arms tightly, their silence heavy with recognition. They've seen encounters like this before, where truth is brushed aside, where respect is withheld, where a child's dignity is chipped away by the authority of a badge that a woman standing near the curb whispers. She's telling the truth. Look at her. She's not lying. Her voice is quiet, but her face burns with frustration. A man beside her shakes his head. Doesn't matter. He already decided who she is. The tension lingers in the air. Every time Anya tries to explain, the officer interrupts, cutting her off with more sarcasm. So let me get this straight, Vance says, leaning closer, his voice dripping with disbelief. You're out here, in this neighborhood, by yourself. And your mom is supposedly some kind of elite soldier. That what you're selling? Yes, Anya replies simply. Her truth is plain. Her honesty is clear. Yet in his eyes, it is impossible. His disbelief is not about evidence or logic. It is about who is standing in front of him, a young black girl whose reality does not fit his narrow vision of what excellence looks like. That laugh, that smirk, that condescension, it isn't harmless. It cuts into her dignity like a blade, dismissing not just her words, but her entire sense of self. It is a form of psychological harm that lingers long after the moment ends. For children, especially black children, being treated as untrustworthy or unworthy leaves scars invisible to the eye, but heavy on the heart. Anya stands steady, but inside she feels the weight of every eye on her. She knows she is being judged, not only by the officer, but by the crowd, by the silent witnesses who are holding their breath. Every answer she gives, every word she speaks, feels like walking on a tightrope, where one slip could be twisted into defiance. The crowd's murmurs grow louder. Some shift uncomfortably, others glance down at their phones, unsure whether to record. These neighbors know what is happening, but their silence also reflects a deep fear of confrontation. They recognize the imbalance of power, one officer with authority, one child with truth, and an audience of people who have lived this story before. This moment on the street is not unique. Studies have shown that black children are far more likely to be stopped, questioned, and accused compared to their peers. They are often treated as older than they are, as though innocence doesn't belong to them. This criminalization of youth is well documented. Even when there is no wrongdoing, suspicion follows them like a shadow. For Anya, this is more than just one officer's disbelief. It is a reflection of a system that doubts black children before they ever open their mouths. A system that often assumes guilt first and humanity second. This is why her mother taught her to remain calm, why she was told to keep her hands visible, and her tone respectful. Because respectability is often demanded of them as a survival skill, while respect in return is denied. Anya stands in the center of that contradiction, polite, honest, unwavering, while the officer ridicules her truth. She should not have to prove her mother's service to anyone. Yet here she is, defending her reality to a man who refuses to hear it. This is the premise of doubt. When your truth is met with laughter, when your dignity is dismissed, when authority decides you cannot be who you say you are. And it is this very doubt that generations of black children have been forced to carry. Before we continue, let me ask you, do you believe kids deserve respect no matter where they come from? If so, hit that like button right now. The street fades for a moment, and so does the sound of laughter. What takes its place is another voice, calm and deliberate. It belongs to Aliyah Vance, Anya's mother, the woman whose strength is the anchor of this story. Her life has been shaped by a reality far different from the officer's narrow assumptions. Aliyah's story begins years earlier, when she entered the Army as one of the few black women in her training unit. From the first day, she understood that she would have to be more than capable. She would have to be exceptional. Every drill, every exercise, every written exam became a test not just of her skill, but of her right to stand where she stood. While others were measured against the standard, she was measured against doubt. If she faltered once, it was taken as confirmation of what some already believed, that she did not belong. So she decided she would never falter. The memory of those early days is sharp. Long runs with boots that wore blisters into her feet. Push-ups under the weight of skeptical stares. Late nights memorizing field manuals by flashlight. Aliyah knew that simply passing would never be enough. She would have to outpace, outperform, and outlast everyone around her. This burden wasn't new. It was inherited. Black women in the armed forces have carried it for generations. During the Civil War, Harriet Tubman risked everything as a scout and spy, guiding enslaved people to freedom while gathering intelligence for the Union Army. She was never given the official rank she earned, but her contributions were undeniable. In World War I, black nurses volunteered to serve, only to be told they were needed last and assigned to the most dangerous posts. They carried on anyway, tending to the sick and wounded with a dedication that defied the barriers placed in their path. World War II brought the formation of the 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, known as the 6888. These women, all black, were sent overseas to manage a massive backlog of undelivered mail that threatened morale on the front lines. In warehouses stacked floor to ceiling with letters and packages, they worked around the clock, sorting millions of items in record time. They succeeded despite discrimination from their own military peers, proving once again that excellence was not optional. It was their survival. Aliyah studied these histories. She knew the names and the stories. They became a compass for her own journey, teaching her that strength often comes quietly, in determination rather than recognition. Her own career followed the same pattern. During advanced training, she remembers the whispered doubts. She won't last. During selection for special forces, she recalls the raised eyebrows, the side comments about quotas. Each time, she pushed forward, relying on discipline and skill. By the time she earned her position, she had collected not only commendations, but also the unspoken acknowledgement that she had surpassed every expectation. Still, she carried the weight of invisibility. While she stood in uniform, decorated, and respected by those who knew her record, she also knew there were many who would never see past her race and her gender. Her accomplishments lived in tension with a society that often refused to recognize them. That tension is exactly what Officer Vance cannot see as he mocks her daughter. His disbelief is not just about Anya's words. It is about centuries of contributions erased or ignored. He cannot imagine that a black woman could wear the uniform he claims to respect, could pass the trials he associates with heroism. That Aliyah's reality tells a different story. For years, she has been more than ready to face danger abroad, while also carrying the silent battles at home. The assumptions in boardrooms, the doubting looks in training halls, the subtle questions that undermine rather than affirm. Her strength is not theoretical. It has been tested in every arena of her life. And in this moment, as she drives toward that street where her daughter stands, every mile is filled with the weight of memory. She thinks of the nights she spent telling Anya what to do if stopped by the police. She recalls her daughter's puzzled face when she asked, "But if I didn't do anything wrong, why would they stop me?" Aliyah never found a satisfying answer. She could only prepare her child for the unfairness she knew would come. The irony is cutting. While she has dedicated her life to protecting her country, her daughter cannot walk home without suspicion. The same discipline that earned her respect on the battlefield has not shielded her child from the skepticism of a single patrol officer. The car hums beneath her hands, steady and purposeful. Each turn of the wheel brings her closer to the confrontation. She has faced enemies with weapons and stood unshaken, but the thought of her daughter mocked and doubted strikes deeper than any battle overseas. Back on the street, the crowd remains in uneasy silence. Officer Vance still wears his smirk, and Anya still stands steady, carrying herself with grace that belies her age. What neither the officer nor the neighbors yet realize is that the woman approaching carries more than a uniform. She carries a legacy, a history of unseen strength that will soon stand face to face with disbelief. The street has grown quieter. Even the hum of insects seems to pause as the standoff stretches. Officer Vance shifts his stance, enjoying the small performance of authority, while Anya remains steady, her braids catching what little light is left in the day. The crowd hovers at the edges, murmuring, uneasy. Then a low rumble cuts through the silence. It isn't the wail of sirens, but the steady growl of an engine built for endurance. A black SUV pulls to the curb with precision, its headlights briefly sweeping over the officer's uniform before shutting off. The driver's door opens. From the vehicle steps a woman in full Army service uniform. Her shoes are polished to a mirror shine. Her brass buttons gleam in the dim light, and the pressed lines of her jacket are as sharp as a blade. Her stride is measured, deliberate. Carrying the calm of someone who has marched through far greater battles, it is Aliyah Vance. The crowd inhales collectively, as though instinctively recognizing the shift in the air. The same neighbors who had stood in quiet discomfort now straighten, their eyes wide. The dismissive laugh that hung over the scene moments earlier evaporates into silence. Officer Vance blinks, the smirk on his face faltering. His badge, gleaming on his chest, suddenly feels heavier, less like a shield of power and more like a reminder of accountability. He adjusts his posture, but his authority no longer feels unshakable. Aliyah doesn't rush. She walks with controlled confidence, each step punctuated by the steady rhythm of her boots against the pavement. She glances briefly at the neighbors, then focuses on the sight of her daughter standing calmly before the officer. Her jaw tightens, but her voice remains composed as she speaks. "Anya," she says softly, the weight of her presence settling over the scene. Her daughter's eyes brighten with recognition, and a hint of relief passes across her face. The officer clears his throat, trying to reclaim the moment. "Ma'am, this is a police matter. Please step back." Aliyah doesn't stop. She closes the distance until she stands just a few feet away, her uniform unmistakable, her rank displayed plainly for all to see. The decorations on her chest tell their own story, a lifetime of service, sacrifice, and excellence. When she finally speaks again, her voice is steady, low, and devastating. "That's the problem," she says, fixing her gaze on the officer. "You didn't want to know." The words land heavier than any raised voice could. The neighbors murmur, their voices rippling through the crowd. "She's the real deal," someone whispers. Another says, "That kid wasn't lying." Officer Vance shifts uncomfortably, his earlier smugness gone. The truth of Aliyah's presence dismantles every assumption he made. His authority is still visible in his badge and uniform, but it now looks fragile in comparison to the weight of hers. Aliyah turns to her daughter, her expression softening for the briefest moment. She takes in the calm way Anya stands, the steady composure that no child should have to summon under such scrutiny. Then she looks back at the officer. "You doubted her because you couldn't see past your own prejudice," she says, her words precise, clipped like orders given on a battlefield. "You didn't listen. You mocked her truth. And you thought that laugh would erase her dignity. But you were wrong." The crowd's silence deepens. Every eye is fixed on the confrontation, every breath held. Even those who had hesitated to intervene earlier now find themselves nodding, their quiet agreement a form of solidarity. The officer tries to recover, his voice faltering as he says, "I was just doing my job. Kids lie all the time." Aliyah doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. "My daughter told you the truth. Your job was to protect her, not belittle her." Her calm composure cuts sharper than anger. The officer has no defense. His earlier confidence drains away, leaving only the weight of exposure. Anya watches all of this in silence. She doesn't need to speak. Her mother's presence has already spoken for her, vindicating every word she said, restoring the dignity that the officer tried to strip away. One by one, members of the crowd find their voices. A man in the back mutters, "That kid was braver than him." A woman near the front whispers, "Her mom, she's the real deal." The murmurs swell into a current of quiet respect. It isn't applause or cheering. It is something deeper, a recognition of truth, of resilience, of strength. That cannot be mocked away. Aliyah turns once more to her daughter. "Let's go," she says gently. She opens the passenger door of the SUV, holding it with the same steady hand that once carried rifles, maps, and the trust of entire units. Anya climbs inside, her dignity intact, her head held high. Aliyah circles back to the driver's seat, her uniform still gleaming under the dim light. The SUV pulls away slowly, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than any words. Officer Vance stands alone in the middle of the street, stripped not of his badge, but of the certainty that once clung to it. The crowd remains for a while, murmuring among themselves. Their respect belongs not to the badge, but to the mother and daughter who showed what strength looks like when truth is doubted. This was never just about disbelief. It was about the refusal to see humanity in a child's words. It was about the arrogance of assuming that excellence cannot exist in the places you refuse to look. And in the end, It was about a mother who carried the unseen strength of generations and brought it to the very doorstep of that doubt. Before we move forward, let me ask you something. Would you have stayed calm like Anya or spoken up in her place? Let me know in the comments below. The SUV door closes with a gentle thud, sealing Anya inside. She sinks into the seat, the fabric cool against her arms. For the first time in what feels like hours, her shoulders drop. Her hands rest in her lap, steady now that the storm has passed. Through the windshield, she can still see the officer standing in the street. His authority feels hollow now, exposed for what it was, a performance that collapsed the moment truth arrived. He adjusts his cap, glances at the murmuring neighbors, and finds no comfort in their eyes. For once, the badge on his chest does not inspire deference. It weighs him down. Outside, the neighborhood begins to stir again. The silence that followed Aliyah's words is replaced with a low current of voices. A man at the back shakes his head slowly. "That kid was braver than him," he mutters. Another neighbor adds softly, "Her mom, she's the real deal." The words ripple through the crowd, not loud enough to be confrontational, but strong enough to carry meaning. Respect, once withheld, is now shared freely. The officer remains alone, isolated in the same space where he once believed himself untouchable. There are no cheers, no grand gestures of triumph. The justice here is not loud. It is in the recognition of truth, in the undeniable shift of perception among those who witnessed it. The victory is quiet, but it is real. Inside the SUV, Anya stares at her reflection in the window. For a moment, she doesn't see the frightened child who was mocked. She sees someone stronger, someone who held steady under the weight of doubt. Her mother's voice interrupts the reflection, calm and grounding. "You did everything right," Aliyah says as she settles into the driver's seat. She doesn't start the engine right away. Instead, she turns toward her daughter, her eyes softening. "You stayed calm. You told the truth. You carried yourself with dignity. That's strength." Anya exhales, a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "I tried, Mom. It was hard when he laughed like that." Aliyah reaches over, placing a steady hand over her daughter's. "I know. His laugh wasn't about you. It was about his blindness. People like that don't see us until they're forced to. And tonight, you made him see." The words settle in the air between them, a balm against the sting of humiliation. Anya nods slowly, her chin lifting with quiet pride. "Does it always have to be this way?" she asks after a pause. Her voice is steady, but the question carries a weight no child should have to carry. Aliyah squeezes her hand gently. "No, that's why we keep going. That's why we tell the truth, even when they laugh. Because the more we live our truth, the harder it becomes for them to deny it." The engine hums to life, its vibration filling the space with a sense of forward motion. As the SUV pulls away, the crowd lingers behind, still talking in hushed tones. The image of mother and daughter driving off together will remain with them long after the taillights fade. That on that street, something shifted. Not in a dramatic collapse of authority or a scene of public humiliation, but in the quiet recognition that dignity cannot be erased by disbelief. The neighbors will remember the calm strength of a child who stood her ground. They will remember the arrival of a mother whose uniform carried both personal and historical weight. The officer will remember too. He will remember the smirk that turned into silence, the badge that suddenly felt like a burden, and the truth he could not laugh away. For Anya and Aliyah, the drive home is not about escape. It is about restoration. In the hush of the car, beneath the hum of the road, the bond between them feels even stronger. The evening has tested them, but it has also affirmed what they already knew. Strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it rides quietly in the back seat of an SUV, head held high, dignity intact. The quiet drive home tells only part of the story. What happened on that street is not just about one officer and one child. It is part of a pattern, with lasting consequences. Racial profiling doesn't end when the patrol car pulls away. It stays with those who endure it, carving scars that are often invisible but no less real. For Black children, these encounters strike at a delicate age where identity and self-worth are still being formed, being treated as dishonest or dangerous. When they have done nothing wrong plants a seed of doubt. Do they see me as human? Do they think I belong? Those questions may never be spoken aloud, but they linger quietly, shaping how a child sees the world and how the world sees them. Research has shown that the repeated stress of profiling produces effects similar to other forms of trauma. Elevated anxiety, difficulty concentrating in school, disrupted sleep. These are not temporary reactions, but long-term burdens. Children who are routinely stopped, questioned, or doubted often carry those experiences into adulthood. The result is a kind of hypervigilance, a constant readiness for confrontation, even in spaces that should feel safe. Educators have reported that students who encounter law enforcement unfairly often disengage academically. When a child learns that excellence will not protect them, the motivation to excel can weaken. The phrase one scholar used, "accepting the space they put me in," captures this dangerous cycle. If society constantly treats you as less than, the risk is that you begin to lower your own expectations, internalizing limitations that were never truly yours. This is why Anya's composure matters so deeply. She did not allow the officer's mockery to redefine her. She stood her ground, spoke her truth, and refused to let his laughter dictate her worth. That resistance is not easy, especially for someone so young. Many children in her position break down in fear, and that fear is not weakness. It is the natural outcome of being placed in a situation no child should ever face. What made the difference for Anya was preparation and guidance. Her mother had given her the tools to stay calm, to keep her voice respectful, to protect herself through composure. These lessons reflect a painful reality. Black parents often feel compelled to train their children for encounters with police in the same way others train for emergencies. It is a curriculum of survival, passed down not through choice, but through necessity. The cost of that preparation is heavy. It forces children to abandon some of their innocence earlier than they should. While others may grow up assuming police officers are helpers, Black children are taught that a wrong move or misunderstood word could put their lives in danger. That knowledge is a burden, stripping away a part of childhood that should have been free of fear. The long-term impact of profiling also extends to entire communities. Each public incident, each unjust stop, sends ripples of fear and mistrust. Neighbors who witnessed Anya's ordeal will carry it with them, adding it to the collective memory of countless other moments where fairness was denied. Over time, these experiences erode the fragile trust between law enforcement and the communities they are meant to serve. Yet within that pain lies resilience. Anya's refusal to be defined by the officer's disbelief is a small act of defiance. But it matters. It shows that dignity can survive mockery, that truth can outlast ridicule. For other children who hear her story, it becomes a reminder that they are not alone, that their worth is not measured by someone else's prejudice. The challenge ahead is larger than one family or one neighborhood. It requires systemic change, accountability for officers who mock or dismiss, reforms that protect children from unnecessary confrontations, and education that reminds society of the humanity too often ignored. Until those changes take root, the burden remains on parents like Aliyah to prepare their children for a world that will question them unfairly. But the lesson from Anya's story is clear. Even in the face of disbelief, even when laughter is used as a weapon, a child can carry herself with grace. That grace is not just survival, it is resistance. And resistance, especially when taught across generations, becomes a foundation for change. Before we continue, let me ask you, if you've ever had to teach your child how to survive a police encounter, drop a heart in the comments. Your experiences matter, and sharing them builds the solidarity that can turn individual stories into collective strength. That Aliyah's presence on that street was powerful on its own. Yet to see her only as a single soldier arriving at the right moment is to miss the deeper truth. Her uniform does not simply belong to her. It carries the weight of generations. It is a continuation of a history that has too often been dismissed, written out, or reduced to footnotes. When the officer scoffed at Anya's claim, his disbelief wasn't aimed solely at her mother. It echoed a broader ignorance, the assumption that Black women have never stood in places of honor, never commanded respect, never proven themselves under the most grueling conditions. That assumption has been wrong for centuries. During World War II, the all-Black Women's Army Corps unit known as the 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion the 6888, was deployed overseas. They were tasked with clearing a mountain of undelivered mail that stretched for miles in warehouses across England and France. Each piece of mail represented hope, connection, and survival for soldiers on the front lines. Working in shifts around the clock, the women of the 6888 processed millions of letters in record time, restoring morale for countless troops. They did so while facing segregation, racism, and doubt from those who insisted they could not succeed. Their motto, "No mail, low morale," captured both the urgency of their mission and the pride they took in proving wrong every doubter. Go back further, and the record reveals Black nurses in World War I who served with dedication, but were forced into segregated units, denied resources, and often dismissed as unqualified by those who refused to see their skill. Even earlier, during the Civil War, women like Harriet Tubman risked their lives not only as conductors of freedom, but also as scouts and strategists, providing intelligence that shaped the course of battles. Each era left its own story of excellence. Ignored, resilience under pressure, and service carried out in the face of systemic dismissal. By the time Aliyah earned her stripes, she was walking a path that had been cleared by countless others. She was expected to be flawless, to rise above every standard set for her peers, simply because failure was never judged equally. Black women in uniform have often been required to be more than competent. They have been forced to be exceptional, just to gain recognition. Aliyah's polished shoes and brass buttons tell more than a personal tale of discipline. They symbolize that relentless demand for perfection placed on every woman who looked like her and dared to serve. And yet, despite these sacrifices, their contributions rarely enter mainstream stories of military heroism. Popular culture frequently highlights the courage of men in uniform, but overlooks the layered burdens of women who faced not only the battlefield, but also the daily fight for acknowledgement. Aliyah's moment on that street is therefore not just about a mother defending her child. It is a moment of historical correction. It places her in a line of women whose excellence has always been real, whether others chose to see it or not. To frame her solely as a soldier who silenced a mocking officer would reduce her power to a viral clip, a fleeting spectacle. But to understand her as part of a lineage transforms the narrative. It connects her presence to the strength of the 6888, to the nurses who tended the wounded without recognition, to Tubman guiding men into battle, to every woman who wore the uniform without fanfare. Aliyah stands not as an exception, but as a representative of continuity. She embodies the resilience that has carried Black women through wars abroad and battles at home. Her uniform, gleaming in the fading light of that summer evening, serves as a reminder that her excellence was never a miracle. It was the product of history, discipline, and the refusal of countless women before her to accept invisibility. When Anya looked at her mother that night, she was not just seeing a soldier. She was seeing a living testament to what has always been possible, even when doubted. And for the neighbors who watched, the lesson extended beyond one family. It was a glimpse into the overlooked chapters of American history, standing before them in full uniform. Aliyah's arrival reclaimed the narrative. No longer a scene of mockery overturned by surprise, it became something more enduring, a reminder that Black women in uniform are not anomalies. They are part of a lineage, one that deserves to be remembered, honored, and carried forward. The story of Anya and Aliyah is more than a single confrontation on a summer evening. It is a reminder of why storytelling matters. Every detail, the smirk of disbelief, the calm of a child under pressure, the arrival of a mother whose presence carried generations, becomes part of a larger truth. Stories like this cut through the noise, breaking the silence that often surrounds injustice. They create space for empathy where denial once lived. Too often, incidents of racial profiling are reduced to statistics or headlines. Numbers alone cannot capture the fear of a child laughed at by authority or the quiet resilience of a community forced to witness it. But narrative does what numbers cannot. It gives voice to the unspoken, offers a face to the unseen, and turns isolated encounters into shared memory. When we tell these stories, we remind each other that dignity is not negotiable. This is why the moral compass of narrative is so powerful. It doesn't just inform, it shapes how we see ourselves and each other. Anya's composure was not simply about surviving the moment. It was about showing that worth cannot be mocked away. Aliyah's uniform was not only fabric and brass. It was history embodied, a lineage of excellence standing unshaken in the face of disbelief. Together, their story demonstrates a truth that stretches beyond one street corner. True strength is knowing your worth even when others deny it. In telling their story, we also build community. Each person who hears it carries forward the memory, adds their own reflection, and contributes to a chorus of solidarity. This is how silence is disrupted, not with a single shout, but with countless voices refusing to forget. The neighborhood that watched the officer falter will not see him the same way again. And those who hear Anya's story will not see Black children the same way again. This is how change begins. Yet storytelling does more than inspire reflection. It sparks responsibility. It reminds us that injustice left unspoken is injustice allowed to continue. By sharing stories like Anya's, we not only honor resilience, but also challenge the systems that create such encounters in the first place. Storytelling turns memory into momentum. As we close this chapter, let it not be the end. Let it be an invitation to carry the lesson forward, to affirm dignity where it is denied, to listen where silence once reigned, and to remember that strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is calm, steady, and undeniable. And now I want to hear from you. Subscribe if you believe more people need to hear stories like this one. Together, we can make sure these stories are not just heard, but felt, and that their truth continues to echo.